Coming up in this video, I'm going to tell you about the one post-processing tip that changes the game once you learn how to do it and you start applying it to your work. Man, the coronavirus, we're right in the middle of it as of the recording of this video, and it is an absolute nightmare. To be confined and not be able to go out into nature and, do hiking and take photographs, it takes its toll on you. And I know a lot of you guys out there are having the same types of things, not being able to do your normal way of life. It can be rough. So, I feel for a lot of you guys out there, our first responders and all of our emergency folks being way overworked and just stressed. Hats off to you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I think for photographers, a perfect time to dive into topics like this is when we're forced into our studios and our offices. To look at refining the way that we do things. I've picked up some of the best techniques and changes during times where I'm kind of forced in and can't get out. And that's what I want to kind of get over to you today is this technique called dodging and burning. And don't change it yet. Dodging and burning. If you haven't done dodging and burning, you have to watch this video. And if you do some dodging and burning, maybe you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. Dodging and burning simply is making the brighter areas or the areas of the photograph that you want people to see, where you want the eye to go, where you want it to flow through the photograph. It starts when someone looks at a photograph, their eye starts down in the foreground and it kind of flows up to the midground. And then it goes up to, the background or some type of flow. It could be that the subject is right in the middle and you just have a background to complement it. But there's a flow, there's a story inside every photograph if it's constructed properly. And so what dodging and burning does is it takes the lighter areas and helps guide the eye to those areas, while burning, takes the darker areas or the items that you don't want the eye to focus on or really notice and kind of darkens those out so that it isn't distracting. And once you learn how to do it and do it properly, man, it changes the game for the final result of your photography. It really, really does. So I want to walk you through a couple of examples of where dodging and burning really, really brought out the greatness, the potential of a photograph. And I seriously think dodging and burning is my favorite and most effective tool when I'm editing photography. Dodging and burning, I saw just dramatic results that you can bring a photograph to life and give it a 3D effect. It's just, man, there's just something about dodging and burning. It's so easy if you just let it be easy and do it the right way. It can be very complicated. You can go into Photoshop and create a layer and then it can be very complicated if you let it be complicated or that was the way you were taught. But it doesn't have to be. It can be very, very simple. As simple as a brush in Lightroom. Walk you through exactly how I go about doing my dodging and burning. And I do most of my photography editing inside Lightroom. Here's a shot that I took in Zion National Park. And just an absolute perfect place for photography. I'm not going to focus a whole lot on a lot of the typical adjustments. I'm just going to kind of show you the adjustments that I use to really get after that dodging and burning effect that I'm looking for. I like to always drop the exposure down so that my histogram shows I'm about that much away from the center, especially on waterfall photography like this. I like to raise my contrast a little bit. Gives me a little bit of what I'm looking for with dodging and burning, a little lighter lights and a little darker darks. Highlights, that's really, each picture is a little different. In this case, I'm going to leave it just a tad lighter. Shadows, now this is where you really start separating the lights and the darks. So shadows I almost always drop, and how much
you know, is really, each photograph is different. In this case, I'm going to drop it pretty significantly. Whites I like to bring up, so this is how I get my histogram back to the center, or at least leveled out a little bit. And my blacks, I usually drop those. Okay, so texture, I usually give a little bit of texture, and I'm going to here. Clarity, you can go either a little bit or take a little off. In this case, I think I'm gonna take just a little off. Dehaze, same thing. The thing about dehaze though is the more you apply, the darker some of your areas can get. So I usually give a little bit there. Vibrance and saturation, I mean, that's really a selective thing. That's kind of up to you. And so now we're going to the tone curve. We're gonna switch this back over to RGB. And this is, you know, this is kind of part of dodging and burning, because you're gonna make the highlights a little lighter and pull down the shadows. And you can see that this is, you know, where a big part of the histogram is. So we're gonna definitely get some effect here. There we go. You see how much difference that was? I'm gonna turn that off and back on. You see where I'm getting my separation? Off, back on. Not gonna mess with color a whole lot here. I kind of like the colors that are in it, to be honest with you. And you know, I'm just gonna do maybe some quick adjustments. We'll, bring up our yellows a little bit. The orange tone, maybe pull it back towards the reds a little. Whenever I have a waterfall, I like to make sure my blues aren't anything unnatural, and you can see they're not really. This is a pretty good one. Not going to cover split toning today. Sharpening I do at the very end. So now I want to go back and start showing you how I do my dodging and burning in Lightroom. And this is the simplest method I've found, and it's with an adjustment brush. So you get an adjustment brush, click new, click effect to reset it. Otherwise it'll still be the same from the last time that you used it. And now we're going to drop the exposure. I'm going to drop it a lot. Now just stay with me here. And with my bracket keys, I'm going to go over here and adjust my brush size. And the areas that I don't want a whole lot of attention to go to, I'm going to just kind of paint those in a little bit. Like in here. I'm using a Wacom tablet for this, so I am pressure sensitive. And if I hit O, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Going in here and just kind of getting these areas. I keep my fingers right on the bracket keys so I can adjust my brush very, very easily. See how these areas are dark? I'm just gonna make them pop a little bit. Almost create like a 3D effect. Here. In this area. And kind of in there. You don't want to be, you know, you don't want to do too much. It's just like any editing. A little less is usually a lot more. And there's a little bush here that's already got some darkness. I'm going to add a little bit of darkness there. Less pressure in these areas. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so let me turn this brush on and off for you. Off, on. See that? Off, on. We're adding dimension. So the thing about this is some areas you may want to have less dark than other areas. So if that's the case, you do a new adjustment brush for the areas that you want to be a different level of darkness. The great thing about this adjustment brush is now I can go back to the slider and adjust it to where I want it. So, you know, you can go too much and you can see that it looks unnatural, almost like someone's written on it with a, you know, a Sharpie. Or you can bring it back and just add a little bit of definition. And I think that's about where I want to be. Now, where we make this pop is on the next brush. Sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 lightening brushes. Sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 darkening brushes. And, every photo is different. It just depends on what kind of areas you're working with. So new brush, change the effect. And now we're gonna raise the exposure, okay? We're gonna make it more than what I know I'm gonna want, just so I can see the effect as it's going on. Now, what I kind of like about this photo is the definition here, and these bushes with this color. And I'm just gonna kind of bring those to life, just nice and gently. The thing about dodging and burning is it needs to look natural. Wherever your light source is coming in, you don't want to put, like with the sunshine in this photo is coming kind of from the upper left. So it makes sense to have this kind of angle here. And so you can lighten things on that kind of angle. Now, if you were to lighten, something that didn't look natural, let's say, in this photo, it's a little bit harder to see, but if you were to, lighten under here, that's not going to look natural because it's a natural shadow. You're just trying to enhance the natural parts of the photo. So since this makes a little sense for it to be seen in here, I'm just going to kind of lightly bring the detail back and try to make it look as natural as I possibly can. A lot of that has to do with how much lightening you're doing. And I'm going to put a little, just to kind of balance the photo. Just a little bit right in here. And so now I'm going to go back to my slider. I'm going to adjust that to where I want it. See that? Now let's turn it off. Wow. Back on. Off. On. Creating dimension. Let's create a new brush. Reset. And I'm going to raise the exposure back up. And now I'm just going to kind of lighten the areas on the rock. What I like to do is separate my editing into, different areas of the photograph. So if you go around and do too much when it comes to lightening, or dodging, then you're gonna run into, you don't want some areas the same as the other areas. So kind of zone it out in your photograph. That way you can adjust them later individually. Like I can go back and click this and then change that brush. Same thing with the dodging brush right here. See that? All right, so we're gonna make this next brush to be focused on the rock. And so now we're just gonna kind of bring the rock areas that we want, just kind of bring them to life a little bit. Very, very carefully not to overdo it. The areas that are, cool to look at. It makes sense for them to have some attention drawn to them. There's no perfect science to this. It's just kind of going with whatever you think looks good. Sometimes the water in a waterfall, you can, bring it to life just by doing a little dodging. See that? That's really nice. I like that. That came out really nice. Over here, I'm pretty light already, so you want to be careful in areas like this because you don't want to go overboard. Like I said, pretty much anything to do with photography and the editing, usually less is a little more. I'm gonna go down here and hit this just a little. Try to get it to look as natural as possible. Anywhere where you see a rock kind of sticking out with the sun coming in from the top left, if there was a direct sun shining hard from the top left, you want to look for the areas that would be getting that light and then bring them to life. And I think we're pretty close here. Let's turn it off. So that's all our dodging and burning is off, and watch it come to life. On. So here I'm going to show you some before and after photos that I went ahead and finished the whole process on. And you can see in a photo like this, you can see the light, but it's just not crisp. It's not alive. And then when you get done editing, you do all the dodging and burning. This is the kind of result you can have. Just bring the photo to life. And that's so, so important, because for a photographer, just like with this scene, I remember how beautiful it was when I was there, but this picture doesn't represent that. But when I do the editing and I bring the parts, you see all the highlighted areas, when you bring it to life like that, man, it's a whole different result. So if you've never done dodging and burning or think it's too complicated, please, I encourage you. It's very simple, and it just takes a little bit of practice, and you can turn, like this photo here, you can turn a completely just okay photo into a really awesome photo. And here is the end result of the photo we were working on earlier. Thanks for joining me, guys. I can't wait to see you on the next video. You guys have an awesome week.